Well, hello, and thank you so much for joining us this evening for our 2023 Community Health Education Series. My name is Ivania Covington, and I am the Community Partnership Coordinator for Faith-Based Partnerships and Senior Strategies here in the Social Responsibility Department at Baptist Health. So this month, we will be discussing arthritis and falls prevention. We have a special guest speaker tonight who I'll be introducing in just a moment. But first, of course, as always, we'd like to review a few items with you. First, the agenda. So we will review a couple of housekeeping items. We will have the introduction of the speaker. Directly following that, we will have a Q&A portion of the session. And then finally, we will end with some brief closing announcements. So as it relates to our housekeeping items, we do record the sessions that we have. And so that will be available to all the registrants after tonight. Secondly, we do keep attendance. And so if you are attending with someone tonight, you didn't have an opportunity to register. First, we'd like to say thank you so much for joining us. And if you would just give us your name in the chat, we can record that for our attendance purposes. And then thirdly, we will be monitoring the chat during the presentation. So as the speaker is presenting, feel free to type your questions there in the chat, and they will be addressed during that Q&A segment. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest speaker for the evening, Ms. Melinda Lewis. So Melinda currently serves at the Williams Family YMCA and has past wellness experience in healthy living programs, personal training, group exercise classes, and youth programs. She has worked in the fitness wellness arena for 20 years with practical experience in the area of athletic training, sports-specific performance, strength and conditioning, epidemiological studies and research, curriculum writing, secondary science, rehabilitation exercise, cardiac rehab, exercise physiology, and nonprofit wellness. So we have a wealth of information in Ms. Melinda tonight. She has implemented several outreach programs to improve community health and youth athletic programs. She graduated in 2000 with a bachelor's in athletic training and exercise science and received her master's degree in exercise science in 2019, both from the University of North Florida. So Melinda, thank you so much for being here with us today. And when you're ready, you can begin. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and you can share yours. Melinda, you can, and you can unmute yourself there. I think you still might be on mute.
Okay, there we go. We good?
All right. Yes, all right. We are good. All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. So tonight we'll be talking about arthritis and fall prevention. So on the agenda for our discussion, we're going to go over what is arthritis, how does arthritis affect the body, the relationship of arthritis with falls, the prevalence, and physical activity recommendations, and our little quote, in order to run, first you have to stand, and then our question and answer segment and some of our YMCA resources that we have for you guys. So arthritis. So in our simple terms, arthritis means inflammation or swelling of one or more joints. It's described more than 100 conditions that affects the joints and tissues around the joint and other connective tissues. Specific symptoms vary depending on the type of arthritis, but usually include joint pain and stiffness. Osteoarthritis is the most common form, and around 60 million US adults have arthritis. There's no cure, but it can be managed and treated. And then the osteoarthritis that we usually see in the most common form leaves those joints sore and stiff. Usually we see a lot of damage to the knees and hips and can do a lot of interference with your balance mobility and can increase the risk for fall. making you more likely to fracture a bone in the process. About half of the people with osteoarthritis report having fallen in the past year. So some of the risk factors that we look at when we're looking at arthritis, you have risk factors that you can control and risk factors that you cannot control. So some that you cannot control, your age, gender, and then genetics and inherited traits, those that you're born with. Born with brown eyes, brown hair. Sometimes I different colors. My brown hair I'm not going to be able to change. But risk factors that I can control would be overweight, obesity. If I were to get an infection, being able to see the time that I seek the doctor's help to be able to get that infection stopped quicker. When it talks about occupation, that would be looking at safe techniques as far as a lot of like with osteoarthritis, you'll look at that, that's what we call like the wear and tear arthritis. So if you're looking at the occupation that you have, if your occupation calls for a lot of bending, manual work, lifting, the type of safe techniques that you use, those are risk factors that you can control on how you do those techniques. And then also making sure that your area in your workplace is safe and clear and clean for you to make sure as far as a safe area to work in. And then joint injury. If you have injuries to your joints, making sure that you're still continuing with those safe lifting techniques. So that we're lifting, with our legs, not with our back, making sure that our knees and hips are in the correct positions. And then smoking, as far as a risk factor as well. So what does exercise and arthritis have to do with each other? So in 2015, the Arthritis Care and Research Study, people that had pain in one lower joint, their knee or hip, were 53% more likely to fall. If they had two affected joints, they had a 74% higher chance of falling, and people with 3 or 4 painful joints were 85% more likely to have a fall. So stiffness and poor mobility in joints end up causing a change in the way that an individual moves or ambulates. So if we have pain in our hips, or if we have pain in those knees, we're not going to walk like we normally would. We're then going to change the way that we're moving. And in essence, we're then going to be more susceptible. So how is exercise going to be able to help with that? So exercise, we've already said that arthritis doesn't have a cure, but exercise can help to strengthen the muscles that support our joints, and it can help to improve the balance. So even though we might have pain in those joints and we might have a little bit of stiffness in those joints, the exercise can help to strengthen the muscles, can help to improve the movement and help to improve the mobility, and can also help to stabilize and help to improve the balance. So where do we fall at? So what is the prevalence of the exercise in our older adults? So 3 out of 4 older adults do not get enough regular exercise or enough physical activity. So only 21.4% of older adults age 65 and older are actually meeting recommendations. Inactivity increases with age, and inactivity is more common among women than men. And if you're looking now at the studies coming out in the last decade, the youth are now catching up with our with our older adults. So our youth are now around 76% inactivity as well. So we do have a huge problem right now. Not, it used to be just that older adults not getting enough activity, but now it's common in all age brackets. So when we're looking at this, 3 out of 4 individuals are not getting enough physical activity. So what is the importance of exercising with age? So if you're looking, let's look at the guidelines as far as the minimum requirements. So 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity of aerobic activity, or 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic activity. So if you're looking at cardiovascular heart health, you can also do a combination of that. And the old thought process was you had to do 30 minutes of cardio every day, and that's what you had to do, and it had to be in 30-minute segments. Now when we look at it, if you come in and you're doing 15 minutes for one day, and you come in and you do 25 another day, you can add that together. So what we're looking at is by the week. So if you can get 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity, of aerobic activity, they also call it cardiovascular, meaning the same, that is going to meet your minimum requirements for your heart health. And when we're talking about cardiovascular activity, we're talking about, are you on the bike? Are you walking? If you're in the gym, are you on the treadmill, bike, rower, stepper? Any type of cardio activity, anything that's going to get your heart going into the heart rate of moderate activity. A keynote here is that adults should also do muscle strengthening activities of moderate or greater intensity that involve all major muscle groups on 2 or more days of the week. So looking at a minimum of 2 days of resistance training. So you'll see the terms muscle strengthening or resistance training used interchangeably. And then it says guidelines are the same for older adults, but when older adults cannot perform 150 minutes of moderate intensity of aerobic activity a week because of chronic conditions, it's recommended that they should be as active as their abilities or conditions allow. Sometimes individuals, if they're injured or if they have a chronic condition, sometimes have a tendency to say, well, I'm hurt, or I don't feel well, and I can't do the 150 minutes, so I'm not going to do anything. And so, we always say here, we believe in Smart Start. Some of our Group X classes are 30 minutes, some are 45, and some are an hour. And I tell them, if you see an hour class and you think, wow, that seems like it's a lot of fun, you want to go in and try it, you don't have to stay in there for the whole hour, right? You can go in and you can try it for a few minutes, and you can see, even if it's 3 minutes, even if it's 4 minutes, and you can try it. And then you could try to increase a little tiny bit at a time. And it's okay, because every single person that exercises has to start at a certain point, and everybody's on a different health journey. And you can't compare your health journey to anyone else's, and everyone has to have a starting point. And I think that's probably one of the key points when you look at exercise, and when you look at someone that has a chronic disease, is not to compare, and not to think that, oh, well, I can't go do 150 minutes right away, so I'm just not going to do it. I was telling a story about one of the ladies in our groups, and she's been in a group with varying ages. We have 12 ladies in a group, and she is the oldest lady. She's older than the rest of them by probably about 15 or 16 years. And when they were given their I just walked in and I said, I just want to hear, some good stories about what y'all are proud of yourselves. What did y'all do that was really proud so far in the program, like what y'all have achieved individually? I just want to hear what y'all have done. And she said, you know what? I can step up on a curb and I can step down by myself. I don't have to hold on to anyone. I don't have to have anyone help me. I can do it all by myself. And she was ecstatic for that. Now, to someone else, they might say, oh gosh, I could do that all the time. That's nothing. But to her, that was probably one of the most important things. And she talked about that and raved. And I was so excited for her because she said she had not been able to do that in decades, actually. And it was really important that that was independence for her to be able to do that without having to have anybody to hold on to. And so a starting point, you have to remember, is not 115 minutes sometimes. Sometimes it's a half a minute. Sometimes it's not even being able to stand. Sometimes it's just being able to move your foot. Okay. So as we kind of talk a little bit and we talk about some of the exercises and stuff, you just have to remember it's okay if you're not even able to stand. You know, right now that there's always starting points to go through, and you just have to start. Okay. Oh, there we go. So what are some goals? So when we look at goals and exercise, you know, I literally being, when I have somebody come in and they tell me that their goals for their exercise program include increase in energy, increase in strength, or increase in their cardiovascular health, not just, oh, I just want to lose weight. Because if you're looking at goals in health, that's really your main goal. Improved balance, improved flexibility. I should have put a star by independence. If you look at being able to do things by yourself, to being able to carry things, being able to walk, being able to move around your home by yourself, being able to do things, activities of daily living. That is a great thing to be able to do. My grandma's 98 and she mows her yard by herself, lives by herself. And when I get a chance to go and visit her and I try to do something in her house, she won't let me because she says she'll get used to it. She doesn't want to. And I would always be like, oh man, but I want to help her. Now I completely understand and I get it. And then maintaining or improving physical function. If you don't use it, you lose it. And then lower healthcare cost. A lot of the research is out there and it shows if you are getting that physical activity and you are more physically active, you're going to have a major decrease in healthcare costs. And I just think that's just a huge added bonus besides all the rest of it. And then more time with activities that you want. And what we mean by that is if you kind of look at the lower healthcare costs, right? You're not having to go to the doctor as much, right? You're not having to stand in line waiting up for prescriptions. You're not having to be on the phone with the doctor's office and make those appointments. You're not having to be on the phone with the insurance companies or to be with someone making those phone calls. And so if you're not having to do all those things, what do you get to do? Whatever you want. You know, if you want to go visit your friends, if you want to go play cards, or if you want to go garden, whatever you want to do, you get to go do those things instead. And so I think that sounds a lot more fun. Even though I have friends that do work in the doctor's office, so nothing against that in Baptist Health, but it sounds a lot more fun to get to go do, right? So when we're looking at goals of exercise, that quality of life, right? You know, increasing that strength, and not when we're looking at, when we work with people with resistance bands and stuff like that, you know, I'm envisioning them at their house, like, you know, carrying that glass or the bag of groceries from the car and stuff into the house. So it's more than the workout that you see in front of them, is being able to translate it from what they're doing in the gym to their home. All right, so getting started. So when you're looking at arthritis, um, what kind of activities and stuff, like what are the things that you should be looking to do to get started? So definitely low impact aerobic activities that are not putting stress on joints, like brisk walking, cycling, swimming, water aerobics, like gardening, group exercise classes, dancing. So if you're having that mobility, if you do have mobility and you can do movements and stuff like that, those are some great activities. I know, especially in the summertime, you see a lot of the aqua aerobic classes that are out there right now, and those are always really great when you have that water buoyancy. The water buoyancy gives you that support so that you're not going to have to worry so much about falls. It gives you that support to where you can do more motion and movements with the body. And actually get some more of that resistance against that water as well, and get some of that strength training and get some of that cardio with it and have some fun in the sun, as they say. And it's a lot of fun. I always say it's like a party in the pool around here when it comes to our aqua classes. I don't even think they view it as a workout, but when you're looking at things like that, like there's ways that you can actually work out and you can have a great time, but you can still have support and not worry and not have the worry so much about the falls and stuff, and have the support on your joints as well. And then exercise can be things that you enjoy doing. When you look at like where it says like gardening, so moving and getting movement. That is the key to it. And then down right here where it says getting started, it says it's normal to have some stiffness and swelling after starting a new physical activity program. With anyone, sometimes when people come in to work out to start a physical activity program, and they work out and they've worked out for 30 minutes or even for an hour if they've done something, and they're going to be sore the next day, because the majority of people, like I said, about 76% of the individuals of the population, they're not working out. So they're going to be sore. So if you add on anyone that has a chronic condition that already has any type of pain or stiffness in it, any type of movement, when you haven't been doing much, you're going to have a little bit of pain and stiffness and swelling after starting it. Not excessive, but a little bit. You know your body more than other people, so always just make sure that you're listening to how your body feels afterwards when you're doing it. And remember, a little bit at a time. So we start a little bit and then we increase a little bit at a time. And then as we do, we just add a little bit, and then before you know it, we're at our goal and we're moving. All right. And so our KISS method, keep it simple, sister. So we just did, we wrote down a few different things, some dynamic balance exercises and some static balance exercises. I think sometimes when people think of exercises to improve or to help arthritis and fall prevention, a lot of times individuals will think it has to be something, oh, I have to go to a group exercise class that's really hard and it's an hour long, or I have to go do something with resistance training and everything. But it can be something very simple, just to start movements. So I wrote some stuff down that can be something very simple that you can recognize even just by terms. So some dynamic balance exercises. One can be marching in place. And you might say, what? And yes, actually it can. So marching in place, if you cannot stand and march in place, you actually can sit and just move your feet and do that pattern marching in place with your feet as well. If you need to stand and hold the wall while marching in place, and just practicing those feet pattern, just marching up and down and having those heels and toes and push. That is a great exercise. to do. And then a tiptoe walk, actually getting on the tiptoes and doing it. And then you're like, oh, wait, you're going, Melinda, I can't stand get on my tiptoes and do that anymore. That's okay. Guess what? You can just sit in the chair and just lifting your heels up and just going to your tiptoes and going back down. So it can be something simple. There's always variations in exercises. So just remember, anytime that you see an exercise, there's always variations that you can do. And depending on where you're at with your activity level, if you ever go somewhere to start an exercise program and you're not comfortable with an exercise, then ask for a variation, ask to see one. I say, oh, I need to see a variation or a different level, and they'll show you. That's what our jobs are. And the opposite of a tiptoe walk would be a heel walk. So that would be bringing your toes up and to stand on your heels and to practice walking on your heels. You can hold on to a chair and just lifting your toes up. You can even sit in the chair while doing it. And then if you have the balance to where you can walk and practice and do that, you can. And then the last one that I put for your dynamic balance exercises is to do what's called the heel toe walk. And it's where you're walking in a straight line and you're putting heel to toe right in front of each other. So if you're walking comfortably to do that, you can put your arms out by your side. You can practice it that way. If you need to hold on to a wall while doing it, you can. If you need to actually hold on to a chair and just practice putting your feet right in front of each other, just to do that, you can. And some keys to also remember too is never use foldable chairs to hold on to, chairs with wheels or anything that's unstable, any unstable surfaces. Don't ever use anything like that for support if you have any balance issues. Please be very careful with that. I've also seen individuals, if you have arthritis, you can tend to also, or neuropathy in your extremities, you should be very careful or not using free weights or dumbbells stuff. That could be very dangerous. To be very careful with that because you could lose that feeling and you don't want anything to slip out of your hands. So just be very, very careful, okay? Always make sure if you're holding on to something that is stable, it's not going to be moving, and that it is sturdy, okay? If you're sitting in your chair, the bottom of the chair should be flat across. It shouldn't be swayed in at the bottom, okay? And then a static balance exercise is what it says, a sit to stand. And a sit to stand is where you practice. You want to get to where you can do it where you're not having to push off the arms of a chair to have to stand up. And so, I had some people in one of my classes, and they said, it was really nice. And I said, what? And they said, I got to walk in this room and I didn't even care what chair I sat in. I said, really? And they said, yeah. They said, I used to have to look in the room to see where was the chair that had the arms so I could push off of it, because I used to couldn't stand up without pushing off the arms of chairs. And they said, now I don't even care. I don't even care if it has arms. I can sit in any chair I want to. And they said, that's a nice feeling. So a sit to stand is where you're practicing to where you can do that. And it can be starting something even just as simple as just rocking from hip to hip and just getting that little movement going into where you're practicing that standing, to where you can get to where you can do it without using those arms, just a little bit at a time, that repetition. And then a twisting side to side is just taking like one arm and just going, it's almost like a little stretch motion, just moving from one side to the other. And then a stretch tall is like just reaching your arms back almost like into a Y pose and just doing like a big stretch, almost like a good morning stretch. And those are just some really fun exercises that are very simple and just to create some movement. And that's really what it's all about, is just to create some movement in the body. Um, and a lot of times when we haven't moved for a long time, or we haven't done exercise programs in a long time, we can talk ourselves out of it really easily. So just starting a program, and then I always say just telling yourself that you're going to do something and committing to it, and then keeping with it until you start seeing the results and effects of it, because you will. Now, if you are in an exercise program and you do start one, I did make sure I write these down for you, because having some discomfort at the beginning, like I told you, every single person, even if they don't have any type of chronic disease, they're going to be sore if they start an exercise program. I've had people come in here to start an exercise program and they're so sore the next day. And I said, well, when's the last time you worked out? And they go, and then they'll look and they'll say, well, geez, it's been like 10 or 15 years, you know? I said, that's probably why you're sore, you know? But there's a difference between having a little bit of soreness and being hurt. And so here's some things, some contraindications that if you're sore, you really need to go see your physician. So if you have a pain that's sharp, stabbing, or constant, if there's any pain that's causing you to limp, if it's lasting more than 2 hours after exercise, it's getting really worse at night. If there's pain or swelling, it's not getting better with rest, medication, or hot or cold packs. And then if you have large increases in swelling, if your joints are feeling hot or red, okay? And then some of our programs that we do have, like here at our branch, we have 11 programs, our healthy living programs that we offer for our members. One of the ones that we have for arthritis is called our Enhanced Fitness Program. The Enhanced Fitness Program is a 16-week program. And the reason why it's 16 weeks is because some of the exercises I just talked about, when you're when we're sitting there, we're saying it, some of them y'all probably said, oh gosh, that's the exercise. Yeah, it is. And some of them might sound like very simple movements to you, but over 16 weeks, I have been absolutely amazed at individuals that were coming into the facility, and you've seen the little shuffling of the feet and stuff of individuals before that now can actually have a walk when they're coming in, and the movement and the mobility that they have has been astounding to me. And it's simply by exercising consistently. I think if they're exercising for just a couple weeks, you're not going to see the same results, but having that consistency of months has been absolutely remarkable. You know, and that not only have they seen it, but they've also told everybody about it. So literally, I was telling them they had to sign up, and it literally was like filled up in like less than like an hour and a half. It was insane, but it's exercise. It's just moving. And it's amazing. That's how our bodies are made. So just getting that movement in there. And then our exercises medicine is it's not based or geared just for arthritis, but it's a 12-week program where we work with individuals on a doctor referral program. And that program teaches individuals, so you're in a small group setting, so you're working out with other people, you get to meet friends, and then we teach you the different ways to exercise. We also give you an education portion at the beginning of each of those. And the wonderful thing about that is that I try to tell everyone the exercise really is medicine. You know, when you go to the doctor and they ask you how much physical activity do you have, it is a vital sign. And it is a vital sign, you know, years from that program. They studied 50,000 people over 20 years, and they looked at and saw that 150 minutes of cardiovascular exercise and the 2 days of resistance training was the minimum amount to prevent all-cause mortality. And I know as a mom and as a woman, I know a lot of times I'm really, if my child, if she was asking me something, I would make sure if she needed to go to the doctor, I would stop everything and I would call out of work to make sure she got her doctor's appointment. Whatever she needed, I would get her there. But if it was for me, I would probably go a very long time sometimes to get my doctor's appointment, because tendency to put your own health last. But we have to remember that we have to put our health first in order to help others. And when I look at my members and clients, that's probably the first thing I tell them is you can't help others if you don't help yourself. So now we are going to our question portion. So we will open it up for questions.
All right, thank you so much, Melinda.
Yes.
If you want to stop sharing your screen, we can try to get some questions going here. And we'll put that back up with your resource, and I'll make sure that all of the registrants get that information as well. But yeah, like I said, thank you so much for sharing such an informative presentation with us tonight. And so we did have a couple questions, and also for our attendees, if you have questions, please place them in the chat. Also, if you find it a little difficult to type in the chat and you want to open up your microphone or be given permission to open up your microphone, if you can just hit the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen, I will know that you want to be acknowledged to ask your question via the microphone. So we'll get started with the first question. So, just in talking about arthritis, many times people with arthritis, like you said, they may feel pain when they begin to start an exercise routine or exercise regimen. Will that pain eventually subside as they continue?
That is a wonderful question. When we look at our program, especially like our enhanced fitness, it is a 16-week program. Another one of the reasons is when we look at members with arthritis, the pain that they usually have is not going to go away. Like a regular member that comes in, and I was saying that they're going to have that pain. Usually they're going to have that pain for a couple of days. With arthritis, you might have that stiffness and that joint pain. You're going to feel that probably 6 or 8 weeks. It can be 6 or 8 weeks that you're going to feel that stiffness and that in the joints, to where you're going to be like, oh man, and then we really see a huge turnaround, usually midway in that program. So around that 6 to 8 week mark is where we really start to see the members feel less of that stiffness and really start to gain a lot of the mobility and the motion. Now, I'm not talking about like that sharp pain where they need to go see the physician, but as far as the pain that they've already felt previously with that motion and movement, just because they've started exercising doesn't mean that's automatically going to go away. They're still going to feel that, and that does not mean they need to stop. That means go ahead and continue it, and they'll start to feel better. It's just going to take a little time.
A little more time. No, I definitely understand that. Thanks for that clarification. So as you get older, what kind of changes should you expect, like with your walking and balance? Are there any, I guess, traits or ways of feeling that you should expect?
That's I love your question. So a couple of things. I also trained a lot of gymnasts and stuff for 25 years. So one of the things that a lot of people focus on cardio and the strengthening, they also forget core work and that flexibility and balance. So as we grow older, we know that we are going to lose muscular strength. So by making sure we are keeping those 2 days of muscular strength, we're going to be able to move those joints. Okay. If we're not doing that, then our muscles are not going to be able to ambulate as well. So sometimes if our muscles aren't as strong, instead of us walking with our feet more narrow, you'll start to see people with our feet start to go more wider.
Mm.
Right. I kind of compare it to if someone is now all of a sudden with a baby, right? Now their balance is way off, right? Now if they are like almost full term, their balance is off really quick,
Mhm.
right? And so how does their walk look?
It's almost side to side.
Right. So they're trying to balance, right? They're trying
Mhm.
to not fall.
Mhm.
So a lot of times people tend to do that, and sometimes they tend to shuffle feet. They're not able to pick the legs and feet up. They have limited motion and movement in the hips and knees sometimes.
Mhm.
So by keeping the flexibility, because a
Mhm.
lot of times people are not focusing on flexibility too. They have that limited flexibility, limited joint movements. So making sure strength is there, flexibility. And then I always say, man, make sure we keep. And so when I say core, that core is all the way through. Core strength to me is super important to keep, because that um, um, keeps everything stable.
See,
Because if you start to feel unbalanced, you can pull that center in, and that can help you with your balance.
gosh, that's something that you said that because in previous falls prevention sessions that I have facilitated, when you talk about the shuffling of the feet,
Mhm.
where people may not pick their feet up, as high as often. Um, uh, when it comes to falls prevention, uh, some of our falls prevention experts that I've spoken with, a lot of times that is like the carpets, like the throw rugs, things like that are in people's homes. They said that there are a lot of seniors who are victims to tripping and falling
Yes.
due to those throw rugs because they don't pick up their feet. And so, to bring it all together with what you're saying as far as exercising and building that core to be able to, maintain that walk, and that balance is, wow, I see how that kind of comes around
Mhm.
full circle.
Absolutely. And just like when I was saying earlier, like when I said like occupation, a lot of times people, they do look at their home as far as like
Mhm.
making sure they have those safe walkways.
Mhm.
But people oftentimes, if they are still in the workplace, they forget
Mhm.
about their work.
The
And
workplace.
they
Mhm.
have to remember that making sure that they are safe in their workplace as well as in their home, that's really important, because sometimes, we forget that we have to be safe in both. Um, and then making sure in your home, just like you said, making sure that we are clearing things out of the way, that we are making sure that do we have something to hold on to if needed?
Mm.
And is it sturdy? If it's a chair, it
Mhm.
does not need to have wheels on it. It does not
Mhm.
need to be foldable. It needs to make
Mhm.
sure that it has something that you can that it's sturdy and secure. Um, so that's stuff that you definitely have to look at, where you're looking at where you're walking to,
Yeah.
is uh, is there anything that's in the way that can cause you to trip or fall? And is there anything that if you need assistance, can you hold on to something?
No, that's good. Thanks for that. Okay, next question. Are there things that you can do? I'm sorry, are there things that you can do to prevent hurting yourself if you do fall?
Are there things you can do to prevent hurting yourself if you do?
Like, is there, I've heard of a term called learning how to fall.
Oh,
I guess that's kind of like where that's derived from. Like if you do fall, and you can maybe break your fall, like
oh yeah,
on a
and that
certain.
goes for everything. Like, just like I said, even with gymnasts, we actually to be honest, before we even teach them how to do a back tuck, we teach them how to fall.
Yes,
So
yes.
yes,
I
yes,
remember there was a physical therapist
yes,
in a previous session saying, that they show them how to get up from a fall.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Mhm.
A lot of times people have a tendency, if they're going to fall, they always want to take their hands, they want to reach their hands straight out. And
Mhm.
what happens if they reach that hand straight out, they're going to break those wrists. Um,
Mm.
and so you have to be really careful with the positioning that you're going into if you're going down to fall. And you also have to be very careful in protecting that head if you're
Mhm.
going down to fall. That's really to me is the protection of the head and the position that you're going into fall. But a lot of times when people go in, they just want to put the hand straight down. And a lot of times if you go to do that, you are going to hurt the hand. So, and the hip on the side, I always say if you can go to the rear side, that's if you can
Mhm.
turn to that.
Yeah, and I know sometimes that, of course, well, not sometimes, all the times it's easier said than done because some things are just, automatic.
Yes, ma'am.
But I wanted to maybe bring that question out because didn't know if there were some people in the audience who may have had that question. And then the next question, um, is it a good idea for seniors or people who, have arthritis? Is it a good idea for them to begin to avoid activities such as walking, shopping, gardening, or taking part in certain social activities in order to prevent falls?
They should not avoid anything. They should
Mm.
be out and having fun and enjoying life. We only have one life.
Mhm.
You should not be avoiding your life. Now,
Mhm.
that does not mean you should not be taking precautions. You should take precautions when needed. If you need to have someone with you, if you need to make sure that you're learning your variation. So let's say I wanted to go to that class, but I needed to change and adjust the movements that I do. Um, or maybe I need to change the way that I am doing the steps. I need to be doing that.
Mm.
So there are individuals that were used to taking classes a certain way. They have to change those motions and movements so that they don't fall. You have to be careful as far as twists and turns. Maybe you can't do that. You have to stay straight centered.
Mhm.
There's certain things that you have to do with that. And then as far as social engagements and activities, maybe not be in the most crowded area of that room so you don't get bumped into.
Mm.
Being very
That's a
careful,
good point. Yeah.
yeah, like that if they say, okay, everybody come up here and everybody it's potluck time, everybody can come up here to the line, wait until the crowd goes and then go up. Things like that. Try to make sure that you are taking the precautions needed to not get injured. But social aspect and having fun and enjoying life is just as important as the physical activity part. That's what makes life worthwhile, right? It's not,
Exactly.
yeah, it's not just the physical part. It's the enjoying life part. It's what we're here
And
for.
no, that's really good. And I asked that question because, some of our caregivers, who maybe loved ones or, children of some seniors and elders, they themselves, may be a little, Mom, don't do that, or you can't do, um, for fear of them getting hurt with doing, certain activities. So this
Oh,
is
well,
just,
I would remind them when they were teenagers what they
right.
told them. 'Cause when they were teenagers, I guarantee you they weren't telling their mamas they weren't going out. So
Yeah, yeah. So, so we understand that, there is definitely some precaution when it comes to wanting to protect mom or dad. But like you said, them being able to participate in those social activities or doing some of the things that they love, they can still do those things, but it would just maybe be at a moderated, tone or moderated rate.
and just like whenever their children were teenagers, they could
Yeah,
go out and they could enjoy their life, but they had to do it under their guidance, moderate.
right,
So it's
right.
that, hey, same principle, just a different age.
Just a
So
different age.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Well, thank you again so much, Melinda. I wanted to see if there was anybody else who had any questions. I don't see any questions in the chat. If someone wanted to maybe be acknowledged by opening up the microphone, I'll give it about 10 seconds before we wrap it up with the closing announcements. Okay. All right. Well, as promised, here are some closing announcements that we have. First, I have some electronic takeaway information that will be emailed to all of the registrants on tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. Melinda also had some resources that she has that I will include in that email as well on tomorrow. We have a survey. For tonight's session, we ask that you please take some time to complete that survey. As I've always said, that those surveys really steer our presentations that we bring to you all on a monthly basis. So please take time to complete that survey and give us your feedback. We would greatly appreciate it. That will also be included in the email on tomorrow. And then next month, join us back here again, where we will be talking about the keys to healthy aging. Ashley Clark with Baptist Agewell Center for Senior Health will be our guest speaker next month. And then in September, please save the date for September the 19th, where we'll be talking about coping with grief. And we are just about to finalize our topic for our October session, which will be the last session for our 2023 health education series. So thank you again so much for joining us. That ends tonight's session. We hope to see you again next month, and please spread the word. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.